Olivia's getting married. My mother's voice bubbled through the phone, dripping with the kind of enthusiasm she never wasted on me. She's marrying the CEO of Market Force Solutions. Can you believe it? My daughter marrying a CEO. I glanced at my computer screen at the acquisition papers I'd been reviewing before her call. Market Force Solutions, a mid-sized marketing firm that had been hemorrhaging money for the past year. Their CEO, James Warner, had been desperately seeking investors. That's wonderful, I said, keeping my voice neutral. If only they knew. The wedding will be at the Plaza Hotel, my mother continued. Though of course, we don't expect you to contribute to the costs. We know how tight money must be with your situation. My situation. That's what they called my choice to work at a small consulting firm instead of accepting the corporate job they'd lined up for me. Never mind that I'd built that small firm from nothing, carefully hiding my ownership behind layers of corporate structuring. I can manage, Mom. Oh, Sarah. Her sigh was heavy with disappointment. When are you going to get serious about your career? Look at Olivia, youngest senior VP at Anderson Corp, and now marrying a CEO. And you're still stuck in that dead-end job. I looked around my home office at the view of Central Park from my penthouse window and smiled slightly. Dead end indeed. The day of Olivia's engagement party arrived with all the subtlety of a Broadway production. The Morgan Hotel's ballroom sparkled with crystal chandeliers and champagne flutes, each table setting probably worth more than what my family thought I made in a month. Sarah, Olivia's voice cut through the crowd. My sister approached in a designer dress that screamed new money, her diamond engagement ring catching the light. I didn't think you'd come, couldn't afford a new dress. I glanced down at my simple black dress, a custom piece that cost more than her ring. It's what I had. Well, she patted my arm condescendingly, at least you made an effort. Oh, let me introduce you to James. James Warner appeared at her side, his confident smile not quite hiding the worry lines around his eyes. I knew those worry lines intimately. I'd been watching his company's financial reports for months. Sarah, right? He extended his hand. Olivia's sister, the one who works at, what was it, honey? Some little consulting firm? Olivia waved dismissively. Nothing like Market Force. Speaking of which, James was just telling me about this amazing expansion plan. I took a sip of champagne, hiding my smile. There would be no expansion. Not under his leadership anyway. Sarah couldn't understand any of that business talk, Olivia continued. She's more of a small picture person. If she only knew that while she was planning her fairy tale wedding, I was planning the acquisition of her fiance's company. Phoenix Consulting Group, my company, had been watching Market Force Solutions for months. Their outdated methods and bloated management structure made them ripe for takeover. Actually, I said carefully, I'd love to hear about these expansion plans. James launched into his rehearsed speech about market penetration and synergistic opportunities. I nodded along, noting how he carefully avoided mentioning the company's plummeting stock price or the 3 failed product launches this year. Fascinating, I murmured, catching our mother's proud gaze fix on Olivia. Isn't it? Olivia beamed. I'll be joining the board after the wedding. James says I have natural leadership abilities. Of course he did. He needed her family's connections, our family's connections, though he didn't realize those connections now largely flow through me, not her. The party continued, a parade of designer labels and practiced laughs. Every few minutes, someone would congratulate Olivia on her brilliant match, while casting pitying glances my way. It's not too late, my father cornered me by the bar. I could still make some calls, get you a proper position somewhere. I smiled, remembering the stack of resumes on my desk, VPs and directors from top firms begging to work for Phoenix Consulting. I'm happy where I am, Dad. He shook his head. You could have been like Olivia. Instead, you're wasting your potential at some tiny firm that nobody's heard of. Nobody's heard of, I nearly laughed. Phoenix Consulting Group was the silent giant of the industry, working behind the scenes to reshape companies like Market Force. We just prefer to stay out of the spotlight. As I left the party that night, Olivia caught my arm. Sarah, I've been thinking. After the wedding, maybe I could help you find a real job. Something at Market Force, perhaps. Entry level, of course. I looked at my sister, really looked at her. The designer dress, the perfect makeup, the practiced smile. She had everything she thought she wanted. She had no idea that in less than a month, at her own wedding, her perfectly planned world would shatter. Thanks, Olivia, I said softly, but I think I'll stick with what I have. Driving home in my sensible car, a carefully chosen prop to maintain my cover, I couldn't help but smile. Let them think I was stuck in a dead-end job. Let them pity the sister who couldn't make it. In my office, I opened my laptop and sent a simple email to my board. Proceed with the Market Force acquisition. Timeline, 3 weeks. Target, wedding day. Sometimes the best revenge isn't proving people wrong. It's letting them believe they're right until the perfect moment to show them just how wrong they've been. And Olivia's wedding would be that perfect moment. I picked up my phone and texted my assistant, "Send me everything we have on James Warner's recent meetings, and make sure our lawyers are ready." The pieces were in place. Now all I had to do was wait for the big day, my sister's dream wedding, where she discovered that her unsuccessful sister was about to become her boss. The irony was almost poetic. The Plaza Hotel ballroom looked like a scene from a fairy tale. White roses cascaded from crystal vases, champagne flowed endlessly, and my sister, radiant in her designer wedding gown, basked in the attention of 500 guests. I sat quietly at my assigned table, far from the main party, of course, watching the celebration unfold. My phone buzzed silently. The final confirmation from my lawyers. The Market Force acquisition was complete. All that remained was the announcement. Ladies and gentlemen, James stood, tapping his champagne glass. "I'd like to propose a toast to my beautiful bride, who from today will not only be my wife, but also a key part of Market Force's future." The crowd applauded. Olivia beamed. In fact, James continued, "I have an announcement to make. As of Monday, Olivia will be joining Market Force as our new Chief Marketing Officer." More applause. My mother wiped away tears of joy. My father puffed up with pride. I checked my watch. 3 minutes until the markets closed. 3 minutes until everything changed. Olivia stood now, her wedding dress shimmering. "Thank you all. I'm so excited to begin this new chapter, and I promise, under our leadership, Market Force will reach heights never before imagined." I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. My phone buzzed again. The market had closed. The news would break any second. As if on cue, James's phone rang. He frowned, stepped away from the table. I watched his face change as he listened. Confusion, shock, disbelief. He ended the call, hands shaking. "James?" Olivia touched his arm. "What's wrong?" His voice cracked. "Market Force. We've been acquired. Phoenix Consulting Group. They bought controlling interest. But that's impossible." The deal wasn't. What it was," I said, standing. The room fell silent as I walked toward their table. The paperwork was finalized 20 minutes ago. James stared at me. How do you know?" I smiled, pulling a business card from my clutch. Not the simple one I usually carried, but my real card. The one that read, "Sarah Mitchell, CEO and founder, Phoenix Consulting Group." "No," Olivia whispered, her perfect makeup cracking as her eyes widened. "This is a joke. You work at some tiny consulting firm. You're nothing." "That tiny consulting firm?" I kept my voice level. "It was Phoenix. I built it from nothing while you were busy mocking my career choices. And now, well," I turned to James. "I believe you'll find your resignation letter in your email. The board has already accepted it." The ballroom erupted in whispers. My mother dropped her champagne glass. My father stood frozen, his face ashen. "You can't do this," Olivia shrieked. "This is my wedding. My moment." "Actually, I can. And that CMO position you were so excited about. The board has some concerns about nepotism. We'll be going in a different direction." James slumped in his chair, all pretense of power gone. "The expansion plans, the strategies I told you about at the engagement party, were exactly what convinced me Market Force needed new management." I sipped my champagne, though I did appreciate the preview. Olivia grabbed my arm, her pristine bridal manicure digging into my skin. Why would you do this?" I gently removed her hand. "Remember last Christmas, when you told everyone not to expect much from my pathetic little job gift-wise? Well, consider this my wedding present, a lesson in humility." "Sarah," my father finally found his voice. "All this time, you were building an empire?" I finished for him. "Yes. While you were lamenting my wasted potential, I was transforming Phoenix into one of the most powerful consulting firms in the country. 40 million in revenue last year alone. My mother swayed slightly. But your apartment, your clothes, were choices. I didn't need to show off my success. I just needed to work quietly until the right moment. I straightened my simple dress. And what better moment than my dear sister's wedding? The ballroom had descended into chaos. Guests were frantically Googling Phoenix Consulting Group, discovering just who I really was. Olivia's perfect day had become a spectacle of a different kind. Security. Olivia screamed. Get her out. I laughed softly. The Plaza Hotel. I own it. Bought it last month, actually. Just for today. I turned to the gathered guests. Please enjoy the celebration. The champagne is excellent. I selected it myself. As I walked toward the exit, I heard my mother calling my name. I didn't turn around. 10 years of dismissal and mockery had ended in a single moment of perfect justice. Outside, my driver held the door to my Bentley. No more sensible car needed. Where to, Ms. Mitchell? The office, I said. We have a company to restructure. My phone buzzed with messages. Family members suddenly remembering my existence. Business reporters seeking comments. Olivia's increasingly hysterical texts. I turned it off. Let them talk. Let them scramble to understand how the sister they dismiss had become the most powerful person in the room. Let them realize that every time they'd mocked my dead-end job, they'd been digging their own professional graves. Monday morning, I sat in my corner office, watching Market Force employees file into their building across the street. They didn't know it yet, but half of senior management would be gone by lunch. My assistant entered. Your sister and parents are in the lobby. Again, they've been there since 7. Tell them the CEO is in meetings all day. I turned back to my window. In Madison, send them the new organizational chart, the one showing their daughter's position being eliminated. That's cold, she smiled. No, I corrected her. That's business. I picked up a framed photo from my desk, the last family Christmas, where they'd all laughed at my modest lifestyle. I dropped it in the trash. Sometimes success isn't about proving people wrong. It's about waiting for the perfect moment to show them just how right you've become. And as Market Force's stock price soared under Phoenix's management, as my sister's carefully planned future crumbled, as my parents finally realized what they'd dismissed all these years, I knew one thing for certain. The dead-end job they'd mocked had become their dead end instead. And I had become exactly what they never thought I could be. Their boss. I was elbow deep in bread dough when my mother walked into the kitchen, her face wearing that expression I'd grown to dread. The one that meant she and Dad had been discussing my future again. Anna, she started, wringing her hands in her apron, your father and I have been thinking. I kept kneading, letting the familiar motion ground me. The morning sunlight streamed through the cafe's windows, catching on the copper fixtures I'd carefully chosen when I'd renovated this place. Every detail of Sweet Dreams Bakery and Cafe had my fingerprints on it, from the vintage-inspired wallpaper to the carefully curated menu of artisanal breads and pastries. Let me guess, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. It's about James taking over. She brightened, seemingly relieved that she wouldn't have to break the news herself. Yes. You know how he's been struggling since losing his job at the investment firm. Your father thinks this would be perfect for him. He has an MBA, after all. I laughed, but there was no humor in it. Mom, James doesn't know the first thing about running a bakery. He's never worked in food service. He doesn't even cook his own meals. But he understands business, she pressed on. Numbers, management, all those things you struggle with. I finally stopped kneading, turning to face her fully. Struggle with? Mom, I've turned a profit every month since we opened. I paid back the startup loan in half the expected time. The cafe has a waiting list for specialty orders. But I could see my words weren't registering. In my parents' eyes, I would always be the impulsive daughter who dropped out of business school to attend culinary arts programs. Meanwhile, James would always be the golden child, even after getting fired for risky trading decisions that cost his firm millions. Your father's already discussed it with James, she continued as if I hadn't spoken. He's very excited about the opportunity. Think about it, Anna. You could focus on what you love, the baking, and let James handle the business side. I wiped my hands on my apron, leaving floury handprints. This is my business, Mom. I built it from nothing. Dad may have co-signed the initial loan. But I'm the one who turned this old building into something special. She touched my arm, her expression patronizing. Honey, we just want what's best for everyone. James needs this. He has a family to support. And I don't matter. I asked quietly, my dreams don't count because I'm single. Because I'm a woman. Don't be dramatic, she sighed. Your father's already drawn up the papers. James will be taking over as managing director starting next month. The world tilted sideways for a moment. Dad can't do that, I said, but even as the words left my mouth, I remembered the fine print on the loan documents. My father's co-signature had come with conditions. Conditions I foolishly agreed to because I never thought he'd actually use them against me. That evening, my father and James came to the cafe after closing. I sat across from them in one of the booths I personally reupholstered, listening as they outlined their plans for my dream. We'll streamline operations, James said, scrolling through something on his tablet. Cut the specialty items, focus on mass market appeal. No more of this artisanal nonsense. That artisanal nonsense is what built our customer base, I pointed out. James rolled his eyes. The customers will adjust. We need to think bigger, Anna. Chain potential, franchising opportunities. Not this small-time stuff you've been doing. My father nodded approvingly. James has some excellent ideas for modernization. It's time this place grew up, became a real business. I looked around at my cafe, at the hand-painted signs, the wall of customer photos, the display case full of carefully crafted pastries. Everything that made it special, everything that made it mine, was about to be dismantled by my brother's corporate vision. And if I refuse? I asked, though I already knew the answer. Dad's expression hardened. Then I'll call in the loan. You can't afford to buy me out, and you know it. He was right. I put every penny of profit back into the business, improving equipment, training staff, building something sustainable. I didn't have the cash reserves to buy out his stake. James leaned back, a familiar smirk playing on his lips. Don't be difficult, Anna. This is for the best. You can keep baking your little treats. Leave the real business to someone who understands it. I stood up slowly, reached into my pocket, and pulled out my keys. The keychain was a small copper whisk, a gift from my first employee on our opening day. I set them on the table with a soft clink. Go ahead, I said, my voice surprisingly calm. Take it. Since you're the man of the family, you must know better than me. James snatched up the keys immediately. Dad started saying something about how I was being sensible. But I was already walking away. I pushed through the kitchen doors one last time, running my hand along the industrial mixer I'd saved 3 months to buy. Then I grabbed my bag from the office and left through the back door. They didn't know about the photos I'd been taking, documenting every detail of the cafe's operations. They didn't know about the copies I'd made of all our recipes, supplier contracts, and customer records. And they definitely didn't know about the new business plan I'd been quietly developing ever since James first started hinting about helping with the cafe. I'd learned one thing from growing up with James. When he wanted something, he usually got it, and then he usually destroyed it. So I prepared for this moment, gathering everything I'd need to start over when the inevitable happened. As I drove home that night, I didn't cry. Instead, I started counting the days until James would prove exactly why this had been a terrible idea. I didn't have to wait long. The changes started immediately. James wasted no time implementing his vision for Sweet Dreams. First, he fired Maria, my head pastry chef who had been with me since opening day. Too expensive, he said. Then he replaced our carefully sourced ingredients with cheaper alternatives and cut our signature items in favor of mass-produced pastries from a commercial supplier. I watched it all from a distance, getting updates from Lucy, one of the baristas who still texted me regularly. The artisan bread program I built, replaced with par-baked frozen loaves. The vintage decor, stripped away for generic modern fixtures. The loyal customers who'd supported us from the beginning, slowly stopping coming as the quality plummeted and prices rose. He's installed TV screens everywhere, Lucy texted one day, playing advertisements on loop. The place looks like a fast food chain now. I didn't respond, but I saved the message along with all the others. Each update was another piece of evidence that I filed away carefully, knowing they would be useful soon. 3 months after James took over, my mother called. The numbers are concerning, she said hesitantly. James says it's just growing pains, but your father is worried. Would you consider coming back, just to help smooth things over? No, I said simply and hung up. Instead, I focused on my plan. I'd taken a job at another bakery across town, working the early morning shift. The owner, Margaret, had been in the business for 30 years and became something of a mentor to me. She understood what I was going through. She'd lost her first bakery to her ex-husband years ago. Men like your brother, she said one morning as we shaped croissants side by side. They think running a food business is just about spreadsheets and profit margins. They don't understand that every recipe, every customer interaction, every little detail matters. She was right. James saw the cafe as just another business venture, something to be optimized and scaled. He didn't understand that our customers came for more than just coffee and pastries. They came for the experience, the personal touch, the quality that couldn't be mass-produced. 4 months in, the cafe's reputation was in shambles. The local food blog that had once named us Best Bakery in Boston published a scathing review of the changes. Regular customers took to social media to express their disappointment. James' response was to hire a PR firm and offer discount coupons, throwing good money after bad. 5 months in, suppliers started calling me. "Your brother's behind on payments," they said. "Is everything okay over there?" I took notes of every call, every complaint, building my case piece by piece. Then, exactly 6 months after James took over, my father showed up at my apartment. He looked older than I remembered, worry lines etched deep in his face. "We need to talk," he said. I let him in, but didn't offer him anything. The last time I'd offered him something I'd baked, he'd given it to James to sell. "The cafe is in trouble," he admitted, sinking into my couch. "James, he's made some mistakes. The bank is threatening to foreclose." I waited, saying nothing. "We need your help, Anna. The customers keep asking for you. The staff is threatening to quit. Even your mother can see we made a terrible mistake." "And James? What does he say?" Dad's expression darkened. "He's already moved on. Says the market wasn't right, the location was wrong, some nonsense about economic conditions. He's looking at starting a cryptocurrency company now." Of course he was. James never stuck around for the fallout of his failures. "How bad is it?" I asked, though I already knew from my sources. "Bad. We're 3 months behind on the loan payments. Suppliers are demanding cash up front. The health inspector cited us for violations last week. We're weeks away from having to close permanently." I walked to my desk and pulled out a thick folder. 6 months of documentation, photographs, customer complaints, supplier issues, and financial records that my friends in the industry had helped me gather. "Here's what's going to happen," I said, sitting down across from him. "You and Mom are going to sign the business over to me. Completely. No conditions, no co-signing, no family involvement. I'll take over the debt, negotiate with the bank, and rebuild what James destroyed." "But I'm not finished," I cut him off. "You're also going to write a formal letter to every employee James fired, offering them their jobs back with back pay. And you're going to take out a public notice in the local paper acknowledging that removing me from the business was a mistake." He stared at me, this daughter he'd never taken seriously, and I saw the moment he realized just how badly he'd underestimated me. "You've been planning for this," he said slowly. "Since the day you let James take my dream away," I confirmed. "Did you really think I'd just give up and walk away forever?" 2 weeks later, I stood in my cafe again, truly mine this time, with no strings attached. The papers were signed, the announcements made, the apologies issued. Maria was back in the kitchen, already working on bringing back our signature items. Lucy and the other staff members were reinstalling the vintage decor they carefully stored away. The local food blog published a new article, "Sweet Dreams Returns to Its Roots. Original owner takes back the reins." Our old customers started coming back, drawn by the smell of fresh-baked bread and the promise of restoration. My mother stopped by on our first day back under my management. She stood awkwardly by the counter, watching as I decorated a wedding cake, something James had deemed unprofitable and eliminated. "I'm sorry," she said finally. "We should have trusted you. Should have seen what you were capable of." I finished piping a delicate sugar flower before responding. "Yes, you should have." "And James? Will you ever forgive him?" I thought about my brother, already moved on to his next venture, leaving others to clean up his mess as usual. "James did me a favor," I said finally. "He showed me exactly how strong I am, how much I'm capable of, and he showed you exactly why you should have believed in me in the first place." She nodded slowly and left. I went back to my cake, to my kitchen, to my dream that I'd fought so hard to reclaim. A year later, Sweet Dreams was thriving again. The loan was being paid off steadily, our reputation restored and enhanced. I'd even opened a small baking school in the space next door, teaching others the skills I'd worked so hard to master. James never came back to the cafe. Last I heard, his cryptocurrency venture had failed and he was looking into house flipping. But I kept his corporate makeover photos prominently displayed in my office, a reminder that sometimes you have to lose something to truly appreciate how hard you'll fight to get it back. Yesterday, a young woman came into the cafe for a job interview. She was fresh out of culinary school, passionate about baking, eager to learn. She reminded me of myself at that age. My brother says I'm wasting my time, she told me nervously. Says I should get a real job in business. I smiled, thinking of the journey that had brought me here. Let me tell you a story, I said, about a baker who lost everything to her brother's business sense, and how she got it all back, and then some. The phone slipped from my fingers, clattering onto my desk. Through the speaker, I could still hear Marcus chuckling, pleased with himself for what he thought was the ultimate betrayal. My name is Deanna Chin, and my husband had just given my family's generational beach house to his 26-year-old mistress. You're too quiet, Marcus said, his voice dripping with smug satisfaction. No tearful breakdown. No begging? I expected more drama from you, Di. I took a deep breath, steadying myself. The house was my inheritance, Marcus. My grandfather built it. And now it belongs to someone who'll actually appreciate it. When's the last time you even visited? You're too busy with your consulting work to enjoy anything. The irony of his words almost made me laugh. My consulting work, the business he dismissed as my cute little hobby, had been funding my systematic acquisition of his company's shares for the past year. You're right, I said calmly. I've been very busy. In fact, I should go. I have a shareholders meeting to prepare for tomorrow. Shareholders meeting, his voice sharpened. What are you talking about? Oh, didn't you know? I'm attending a Parker Industries annual meeting. See you there, darling. I hung up before he could respond, savoring the moment. Marcus had always underestimated me, seeing me as nothing more than a convenient corporate wife who looked good at company events. He never bothered to understand what I actually did for a living. When we met 5 years ago, I was already a successful business consultant specializing in corporate restructuring. But Marcus, riding high as CEO of his family's company, only saw what he wanted to see, a beautiful woman who seemed impressed by his success. I should have recognized the red flags early on. The way he dismissed my career, his constant need to remind me of his importance, how he'd interrupt me in meetings to explain things I already understood. But I'd been blinded by what I thought was love. The beach house had been my wake-up call. 6 months ago, I'd overheard him on the phone with Sarah, his much younger VP of marketing, planning weekend getaways there. My grandfather's house. The place where I'd spent every summer growing up, where my parents had gotten married, where I'd learned to swim and surf and dream. That's when I started looking more closely at Parker Industries' financials. What I found was troubling. Questionable accounting practices, inflated projections, and a board of directors too cowed by Marcus's family name to question anything. Marcus had no idea that while he was romancing Sarah at my family's beach house, I was meeting with institutional investors, pointing out discrepancies in the company's reports, suggesting that perhaps new leadership was needed. I picked up my phone and dialed my attorney, Rachel Kim. He did it, I said when she answered. He actually transferred the beach house to her. Rachel's typing was audible in the background. Perfect. That's the last piece we needed. Property transfer documents have already been flagged for the SEC investigation. How did he sound? Smug. He still has no idea about tomorrow. None of them do, Rachel confirmed. The shareholders are ready. The board members who flipped are keeping quiet. Everything's in place. I walked to my window, looking out at the city skyline where the Parker Industries building dominated the view. Marcus had chosen our penthouse apartment specifically for this vista. He liked being able to see his family's legacy towering over everything. What about the other documentation? I asked. The proof of his relationship with Sarah, the misuse of company funds. All ready to go. We have records of every business trip they took together, every gift he bought her with company money, including the recent renovations to your beach house, which, by the way, we'll be getting back. The transfer won't hold up in court, especially given the timing with the SEC investigation. I smiled, remembering how Marcus had laughed at me for being boring and obsessed with documentation when I insisted on keeping detailed records of everything. A good consultant is only as valuable as their documentation, I told him once. He dismissed it as another one of my quirky habits. One more thing, Rachel added. Sarah sold her shares yesterday, just like you predicted she would. Dumped everything as soon as Marcus gave her the beach house. Of course she did, I said. Marcus never understood that loyalty can't be bought. But disloyalty usually comes with a price tag. I opened my laptop, reviewing the presentation for tomorrow's shareholders meeting one last time. The numbers were damning. Under Marcus's leadership, Parker Industries had been hemorrhaging money while maintaining a facade of success through creative accounting and his family's reputation. My phone buzzed, a text from Marcus. What game are you playing? You're not a shareholder. I didn't respond. Let him wonder. Let him spend the night trying to figure out how his wife, the one he dismissed and betrayed, could possibly be a threat to his position. The truth was both simple and devastating. I'd spent the past year buying up shares through various shell companies and investment groups. Marcus, so confident in his position as CEO, hadn't even noticed the shifting ownership patterns. By the time he gave away my beach house, I controlled enough shares to call for a vote of no confidence. Tomorrow, Marcus Parker would learn that the wife he underestimated had become his biggest threat. The beach house was just the final insult, the last push I needed to execute the plan I'd been crafting since I discovered his affair. As I prepared for bed that night, I heard my phone buzzing repeatedly. Marcus probably finally putting the pieces together. I turned it off, remembering something my grandfather used to say about the beach house. The best view comes after the hardest climb. Tomorrow, I'd show Marcus exactly how high I climbed while he wasn't paying attention. The morning of the shareholders' meeting dawned clear and cold. I arrived at Parker Industries headquarters early, nodding to security guards who knew me only as the CEO's wife. Today, that would change. The boardroom filled quickly. I sat quietly in the back, watching Marcus work the room. He'd always been good at this part, the handshakes, the fake laughs, the illusion of control. But today, his smile seemed strained. His eyes kept darting to where I sat, confusion and anger warring on his face. Sarah arrived last, wearing a designer dress that I recognized. Marcus had bought it with company funds, according to the records. She faltered when she saw me, but quickly recovered, taking her seat near Marcus. Before we begin, Marcus announced, standing at the head of the table, I'd like to address some unusual circumstances. My wife seems to have confused her role here today. Actually, I interrupted, standing. I think you're the one confused about roles, Marcus. Rachel, would you please distribute the documents? My attorney began passing out folders containing detailed evidence of Marcus's mismanagement, the affair with Sarah, the misuse of company funds, the questionable accounting practices. But more importantly, proof of my majority shareholding through various investment groups. This is ridiculous, Marcus sputtered, flipping through the pages. These shares. This is impossible. I would have known. Would you? I asked, moving to the front of the room. You were too busy buying beach houses for your mistress to notice that your wife was becoming your biggest shareholder. The room had gone deathly quiet. Board members were reading through the documents, their faces growing increasingly grave. Sarah had gone pale, probably realizing that her recently sold shares had been part of my acquisition strategy. As majority shareholder, I continued. I move for an immediate vote of no confidence in Marcus Parker's leadership and call for his removal as CEO. You can't do this, Marcus said, but his voice had lost its authority. This company is my family's legacy. Was your family's legacy, I corrected. Before you started treating it like your personal bank account. The SEC is very interested in how you've been running things, by the way. Those business trips with Sarah, the creative accounting, it's all documented. One by one, board members began to raise their hands in support of my motion. Marcus watched in horror as his power crumbled. Sarah slipped out of the room. Her resignation would be on my desk by morning. Why? Marcus asked, his voice barely a whisper. Because of the beach house? I laughed, the sound sharp in the quiet room. The beach house was just the final straw. This is about every time you dismissed me, Every time you treated me like I was too stupid to understand real business. While you were busy playing CEO and sugar daddy, I was building something you couldn't see because you never bothered to look. The vote was unanimous. As security arrived to escort Marcus from the building, I turned to address the board. Parker Industries has been operating under a facade of success for too long. I've prepared a detailed restructuring plan that will return this company to genuine profitability. My team will be reaching out to each department head to begin implementation immediately. Hours later, after the dust had settled and the last board member had left, I sat in what had been Marcus's office, my office now. My phone buzzed with a text from the real estate attorney. The beach house transfer had been invalidated. Another buzz. The SEC wanted to schedule a formal interview with Marcus. I opened my grandfather's old photo album, the one I kept in my desk. There he was standing proud in front of the beach house he'd built with his own hands. Success isn't about what you own, he used to tell me. It's about what you build. I built something all right, not just a successful consulting business that had funded my takeover, but a strategy that had exposed Marcus's weaknesses and saved Parker Industries from his mismanagement. My phone buzzed again. Marcus, finally, I underestimated you. Yes, I typed back you did. The beach house keys are in your office box. Don't forget to turn in your company credentials. I closed the album and looked out at the city skyline. Marcus had chosen this building because he liked looking down on everything. I chose to keep the office because it reminded me that the best view comes after the hardest climb. The next morning, I arrived early again. Old habits die hard. But this time, when I walked through the Parker Industries lobby, people nodded with respect, not polite dismissal. The security guard smiled. "Good morning, Ms. Chen," he said, using my maiden name, the name I used to build my consulting business, the name I take back now that the divorce papers were filed. "Good morning, Tom," I replied, heading for the elevator. As I rode up to my office, I thought about Marcus, probably waking up in some luxury hotel, finally understanding what he'd lost. Not just his position or his company, but someone who could have been a true partner if he'd bothered to see me as an equal. The beach house would need work. Sarah's renovations had stripped away much of its character. But that was okay. Like my grandfather always said, the best things in life are the ones you rebuild yourself. I had a company to run after all, and this time, I'd make sure it was built on something stronger than facades and illusions. I'd make it a legacy worth keeping. Ready to begin? Rachel asked, meeting me at my office with the day's agenda. I smiled, thinking of all the people who'd underestimated me over the years. I've been ready for a long time. Let's build something real.
The conference room at Anderson and Sons Manufacturing felt like a tomb. My father sat at the head of the table, looking smug as he prepared to hand over the family business, or what was left of it, to his disappointment of a daughter. "Well, Emma," he said, shuffling the papers with exaggerated ceremony, "as discussed, your sister Catherine will inherit the house, the vacation properties and the investment portfolio. You get." He paused for dramatic effect, Anderson and Sons. My mother sat beside him, lips pursed in that familiar expression of disapproval she'd perfected over the years. Catherine, my successful sister, was there too, barely concealing her smirk. "A failing company for the failing daughter," Catherine muttered, not quite under her breath. "Seems fitting." I maintained my calm, professional demeanor, the same one I'd cultivated over the past 5 years as the anonymous CEO of Phoenix Industries, Anderson and Sons' biggest competitor and the industry's rising star. "Just sign here." Dad pushed the papers toward me. "Though I don't know why you'd want a company that's losing millions. Should have gone to business school like your sister instead of finding yourself after college." What they didn't know was that my 3 years of finding myself had actually been spent learning the manufacturing industry from the ground up, working under different names at various companies, preparing to build something of my own. "The handover meeting with Phoenix Industries is in 30 minutes, my father continued. "They're buying our biggest contracts. It's the only way to keep the company afloat, even if it means dealing with that mysterious CEO who's been eating our market share." I checked my watch. "Actually, Phoenix's CEO should be here any minute." "You haven't met them either?" Catherine asked, suddenly interested. "Nobody seems to know who runs Phoenix. They're so secretive." Right on cue, my phone buzzed. A text from Marcus, my COO. "Team's in position. Ready when you are, boss." Before we proceed, I said, standing up, I should mention that I've already reviewed these contracts with my lawyer. Your lawyer? Mom scoffed. Since when do you have a lawyer? The conference room door opened and my executive team filed in, all 5 of them, dressed impeccably in designer suits. Marcus led the group, carrying a sleek briefcase bearing the Phoenix Industries logo. Mrs. Anderson, Marcus said smoothly, I believe you're sitting in my Sue's chair. The confusion on my family's faces was priceless. Mom actually stood up, automatically deferring to what she assumed was Phoenix's leadership team. I don't understand, my father frowned. We're supposed to meet Phoenix's. You are, I said, taking the seat my mother had vacated. Phoenix Industries, founded 5 years ago by Emma Chin. That's my married name, by the way. Another detail you never bothered to ask about. The signing pen dropped from my father's hand. The silence in the conference room was deafening. Catherine's smirk had vanished, replaced by open-mouthed shock. My mother had sunk back into her chair, clutching her designer handbag like a lifeline. This is some kind of joke, my father finally managed, his face reddening. Phoenix Industries is a $500 million company. You can't. Actually, Marcus interjected, opening his briefcase. Phoenix Industries' current valuation is $780 million after our last funding round. And yes, Emma owns 67% of the shares. He distributed folders containing Phoenix's financial statements, market analysis and acquisition proposals. My family stared at the documents as if they were written in alien hieroglyphics. While you were busy writing me off as a failure, I said calmly, I was building the company that's been systematically outperforming Anderson and Sons in every market sector. Catherine grabbed one of the folders, her hands shaking slightly as she flipped through the pages. The Morrison contract, the Johnson deal, the Asian expansion, that was all you. Every single one, I confirmed. Remember last Christmas when you mocked me for missing family dinner because of work commitments? I was in Singapore closing a $50 million deal. My mother found her voice, though it trembled. But you live in that tiny apartment. You drive a used car. Because unlike some people, I don't measure success by appearances, I replied. I invest in my company, my employees, and our growth. Marcus pulled out another set of documents. The real reason for this meeting. These are our terms for acquiring Anderson and Sons Manufacturing. My father's face went from red to purple. Acquiring? We're just here to sell some contracts. Dad, I leaned forward. Anderson and Sons is hemorrhaging money. Your market share has dropped 60% in 5 years. The only contracts keeping you afloat are the ones I deliberately left alone, until now. You did this on purpose? Catherine whispered. You destroyed our family's company? No, I corrected her. I built a better company. One that values innovation, treats employees fairly, and doesn't rely on an outdated reputation. Anderson and Sons destroyed itself by refusing to adapt. I nodded to Marcus, who pulled up our presentation on the conference room screen. Phoenix Industries is prepared to acquire Anderson and Sons for $30 million, significantly more than its current market value. All employees will be retained with improved benefits. The Anderson name will become a subsidiary brand. 30 million? My father scoffed, but I could see the calculation happening behind his eyes. He knew it was more than he could get anywhere else. The alternative, I continued, is watching Anderson and Sons continue its decline while Phoenix expands into your remaining market sectors. Your choice. My phone buzzed, a text from David, my husband. How's it going? Need backup. I smiled slightly, typing back. All under control. See you at dinner. Catherine was still processing the revelation. All those times you came to family events in department store clothes, listening to us brag about our achievements. I was gathering market intelligence, I finished for her. Amazing what people will say around someone they think is a failure. My mother suddenly straightened, her social conditioning kicking in. Well, darling, we always knew you had potential. And now you're so successful. Don't, I cut her off. Don't pretend you believed in me all along. We all know that's not true. The next few moments would change everything. I pulled out one final folder, the thickest one, and placed it on the table. This contains every email, every memo, and every conversation where you disparaged my abilities or questioned my worth. Our PR team has prepared 2 press releases about this acquisition. Version A is a simple business announcement. Version B includes the story of how the Anderson family treated their daughter, complete with documentation. My father's face drained of color. "You wouldn't dare." "Try me," I replied calmly. "I've spent 5 years being underestimated by this family. I think the business world would find it fascinating to learn how the mighty Andersons never saw their biggest competitor hiding in plain sight." Marcus distributed copies of both press releases. Catherine read them, her legal training kicking in. "This would destroy our family's reputation." "The same reputation you valued more than your own daughter?" I asked. "The one that made you think it was acceptable to mock me at every family gathering?" My mother reached for her usual tactic, guilt. "We're your family, Emma. Despite everything." "Family." I laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Let me tell you about family. David, my husband whom none of you bothered to meet, believed in me when I had nothing but an idea. My executive team who you just met, they're more family to me than you've been in the past decade." I opened my laptop, displaying Phoenix's organizational chart. "See these names? Sarah in R&D, Mike in operations, Tom in sales? They're all former Anderson and Sons employees who left because you refused to recognize their talent. They're now executives at Phoenix with equity stakes in the company." "You poached our employees?" my father growled. "No, Dad. I gave opportunities to people you undervalued, just like you undervalued me." Catherine, ever the pragmatist, was reviewing the acquisition terms. "These are actually quite generous," she admitted reluctantly. "Of course they are," I said. "Despite everything, I'm not cruel. I'm offering fair value for the company, job security for the employees, and a chance for the Anderson name to survive as part of something successful." My phone buzzed again, this time with an alert from our trading department. Anderson and Sons stock had started dropping as rumors of the acquisition spread. "You have 30 minutes to decide," I announced, standing up. "My team will wait here. I have a lunch meeting with the governor about Phoenix's new tech training initiative." "The governor?" my mother gasped. "Since when do you?" "Since I became one of the state's largest employers," I cut her off. "Amazing what building a $780 million company will do for your social connections." As I gathered my things, Catherine spoke up. "The inheritance papers. You never signed them." "I don't need them," I replied. "Keep Anderson and Sons. Keep the houses and the investments. I built something better." I walked to the door but paused before leaving. "Oh, and Mom? That tiny apartment you mocked? It's actually the penthouse of the building I own. The used car is a custom Tesla with a waiting list of 2 years." I just never felt the need to show off. The next few hours were a blur of activity. My parents, realizing they had no choice, signed the acquisition papers. Catherine, the star lawyer, couldn't find a single loophole to exploit. By evening, Phoenix Industries' acquisition of Anderson and Sons was official. I chose press release A, the simple business announcement. Not out of kindness but because success was revenge enough. That night, at home with David, I finally allowed myself to process everything. "How does it feel?" he asked, pouring us both a glass of champagne. "Honestly, not as satisfying as I thought it would be," I admitted. "I spent years planning this moment, but now you realize you outgrew their approval a long time ago," he finished. "Exactly." I smiled, looking out over the city from our penthouse. "Phoenix is expanding into Europe next month. We're launching our tech education foundation. We're changing lives. That means more than any revenge." My phone buzzed one last time, a text from Catherine. "I never knew. I'm sorry." I left it unanswered. Some bridges, once burned, aren't worth rebuilding. The next morning, I walked into Phoenix's headquarters, greeted by the team that had become my real family. On every screen, news headlines announced the acquisition. Analysts praised the strategic brilliance of Phoenix Industries' mysterious CEO. Marcus met me at my office. "The Anderson and Sons transition team is ready. What's our first move?" I smiled, pulling up our strategic plan. "Let's show them how a failing daughter runs a company. Because sometimes the best revenge isn't in the big reveal or the dramatic takedown. It's in building something so successful that those who doubted you become nothing more than a footnote in your story.